So I'd like to make a video here kind of going through what you should do when you're approaching an extract. In this case, I'm talking about Kaleidoscope, so we're talking about Ray Bradbury. For the IB students, if you're a higher level student, I'm going to be showing you a couple of quotes and some things that you should ask yourself, okay? So let's start off with this one over here. The first thing that you need to do is read through the extract. So supposing you take the time to read it. Your next question is going to be, what really jumps out at you? What's the image that influences you the most? That's an important question because the individual oral assessment is about you. The more that you understand and feel comfortable with what you're talking about, the better you can explain and defend it. Now, as you're doing that, you need to ask yourself a few other easy questions that I've asked you all in class again. So let's say, for example, we start off with this over here. Alright, so wriggling. If you don't know what it means, you can use word reference to look it up. But this is an adjective over here describing what? The silver fish. Now, this is a noun. This is an adjective. The adjective describes the noun. We know that. Adverbs describe verbs. She ran quickly. Quickly modifies ran and not she. She is tall. Tall is an adjective, modifies her. Bradbury uses a lot of similes and metaphors. Okay, so this is technically called a simile because he uses like over here, but this over here is a metaphor, into a dark sea. Then you ask, well, why? What is this doing to the reader? You need to approach Bradbury as a painter, but he's painting with words. What do adjectives do? Adjectives give colors to words. They modify, expand. They create an image in your mind as a reader. Okay, even a giant can opener as well for the rocket. Bradbury gets his message across effectively, in my opinion, because he's able to create these intense visual experiences. One of you also mentioned this, 1,000,000 pieces. So 1,000,000 different pieces create something different in my mind than an explosion. Here, I really do focus on the millions of different, like a really massive explosion, but I can see all the little parts, the immensity of it. Into a dark sea. Now they're not in sea, they're in space. But space and sea themselves are very much symbols of consciousness. So humans being thrown into this world over here. And the silver fish who are wriggling. Look up that word over there. And look a little bit about the image it creates. So he's trying to relate this to us, something that we can see because we've never been in space, etc. But we know about can openers, we know about fish, we know about seas. And again, our metaphor over here, a lost sun. And swarm. Okay, so each one of these words, I don't really look at as words when Bradbury's combined. I look at them as colors on a painting that he paints with words for us. Now that's me. You look at it, I don't know if it's the can opener, the silver fish, the sea, or the 1,000,000 pieces, whichever one comes to you. Now obviously this is a short one, you're going to have a longer one, but still. That's what you want to focus on, that's what you want to develop. Something that means something to you, because I don't have all the answers. And most of the time, if not all the time, when I speak to you, I always learn something. You offer a different vision than me. So this brings me here. Okay, no problem. This is a longer one over here, and when you look at it, the reason I chose it over here is because Bradbury, again, is a poet. Okay, what is a poet? A poet is somebody who paints with words. In my opinion, that's how I would describe and define a poet. Falling, 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 falling. Why? What's the difference between saying they're falling and they're falling, falling, falling? What this does in the reader is it 1, 2, 3 brings you into that sensation. It's more than just falling. Now I'm falling and I'm still falling and I'm still falling. They're forever falling, falling down. Why? Okay. Again, Bradbury's purpose here is to influence the reader, create an image, a sensation, an experience. Remember that you're reading this, so you're reading. Okay, and then you're following along. You're following Bradbury. It's like a path, a Google map here that he's taking you through, one step at a time. And his destination is his theme. You should maybe write that down. That makes a lot of sense. Right? So you follow him. You're following his narrative. You're following his description. You're visualizing it all. And what he wants to do is bring you, immerse you in your imagination into this place over here so that you can experience what he wants you to experience, what he's feeling, thinking, or what he wants to say. Again, we got to swim over here. So we really do have a lot of sea and water references. Again, with the adverbs over here, screaming insanely. Right? So anything with an ly is technically an adverb, modifies a verb, but still, Bradbury modifies everything. And you want a simple, strategy to know why a sentence is there. Well, just say in your head, well, what if you just said falling? How would that be different than falling? Falling. Falling. Hollis saw one of them float by, very near, screaming. Or, Hollis saw one of them float by, very near, screaming and screaming. Stop it! The man was almost at his fingertips, screaming. Or, stop it! The man was almost at his fingertips, screaming insanely. Pictures, visuals. That's what these words do. Okay, if you know what they mean, they create an image and he paints them. He brings us there. Really, if you approach it that way, you really discover the beauty of the way that Bradbury writes. In this time over here, really, it's a little bit of a looking at the brain. Okay, so we got a brain over here, brain over here, brain over here. It's kind of, what brain is he talking about? I mean, the human brain, maybe. There's a lot to say, and there's no definitive answer. You remember, literature is not math. Math, you can say, well, 1 + 1 always equals 2. It's not that easy. Look again, the many goodbyes, the short farewells. Bradbury is using these words, very carefully chosen. Now, I added this part over here for mostly kind of to bring us to some idea of what some of the other images that he uses. So, one of the words he uses is carbonized. This person goes away, disappears as a meteor going through the atmosphere, becomes a shining star. Ironically, to a young boy looking up to the sky with his mom, makes a wish. Now, a shooting star is beautiful, but I'm not sure if you knew that that shooting star was really a human being smoked, it would be really that beautiful as well. And again, here we go. There we go, Bradbury. These are the things that he wants us to think about. My life, it was empty, it was terrible, meaningless. This is my fatality. This is the universe. This is infinity. This is life. What am I doing? What did I do? It's only really, unfortunately, when we face mortality that people really ask themselves some really important questions that we really should be asking ourselves pretty much every day. And then the ashes over here, so we got this cycle. Alright? The cycle of the universe and the cycle of all kinds of things and the different constellations, etc. I included this one because this brings us to the title. And Bradbury is a real king, or queen, yeah, king anyway, when it comes to choosing these titles that are really not easy to, can't nail it to a wall. You can't really say definitively, look, that's the title, bye-bye. Oh, there's really a lot to say. And here we come to this cluster over here, unending, shifting, shaping, kaleidoscope, the colors. Kaleidoscope, again, this kind of circular thing happening over here. Crystal fires, look at all that. The velvet inks, great diamonds, emerald mists. I mean, really, seriously. Nobody is using as many adjectives as Bradbury. That's why I keep mentioning it. But I mention it because I want you to know the influence that it's supposed to have on you. This is the other mention of kaleidoscope over here, but with a shard. Okay, so you're going to look this up again to kind of think about a shard is like a broken piece of glass. You take that little piece of glass, you put it up to light, it's going to create this kind of kaleidoscope over here. And then with the thinking part, we come back to that brain thing we saw before. And again, many, many, many more metaphors. The star deep, the meteor swarm. And here, interesting as well too. There, the captain. There, Stone. There, Simpson. There, Applegate. There, Smith. Why? Didn't you just say they're all floating off into space? Bye-bye. In our minds, we're the captain to the moon. Stone to the meteor. There, Stimson. There, Applegate, Pluto. There, Smith, and Turner, and Underwood, and all the rest. Boom, boom, boom. Bradbury's not in a rush, okay? Bradbury takes his time. And most of the time, to tell you the truth, I don't know if I'm reading a short story or if I'm reading like a narrative poem. Honestly, with Bradbury, I can't tell the difference. But still, he uses, this is in fact a poetic device. And it's something that, again, is bringing the reader to hear, to hear, to hear. It's like he's holding our hand and bringing us step by step. And really taking the time. Hey, look at that. Look at that. Look at him. Look at him. You see him? You see that? And there was a faster way to say it. But Bradbury's not about the fast way. He's not the Twitter writer. He's not going to tweet in under 280 characters. He'd never do that. So for this one over here, I included this paragraph because it was a small little paragraph that really explains that these people could have saved themselves. This is kind of like what they could have done to not be like floating in space forever. They were in a rush. Nothing could bring them back. And they were not able to bring these little lifeboats with them into space, which could have saved them. They hadn't had the time. But still, they technically could have been saved. So it's kind of why I added this over here, because this took me a while to find. After I read it a couple times, like, well, wait a minute, they could have been saved. How? And this was how. But still, we come back to the same old thing. We've got our words over here: irrevocable fate, a vague acceptance. There's separate ways, sealed tight spacesuits, glass tubes, right? Small lifeboats, saving, collecting, finding. Now maybe I'm going a little language A on you. This is something that we get into more detail with the language A students, but I feel just a little insight into the depth of those extracts. There's nothing short about a Bradbury extract. If anything, my biggest challenge would be like, what am I supposed to focus on? Like I said in the very beginning, you read it, what really pops out at you? What can you really see? Then you get into that, develop that, and then, yeah, that's about it. So, I hope that helped.